All right. With that, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Pro Football Hall of Fame for another edition of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series, today featuring the Denver Broncos' own Liz Jeralds. And we'll be speaking to her, and you'll see her here in a little bit. But before we get started, as always, kind of give you a little bit of background on what the program is that we have here today, if this is your first time tuning in. If so, first off, thank you so much for tuning in. We're super excited for you to be here for the program today. What you're going to learn about careers in and around the NFL. We speak so much about all the different careers out there in sport, both in the game of football and in all other sports as well. And our goal today is to show you what one specific career looks like, what Liz does on a day-to-day basis, how she got to where she is, and things that you can do today as a high school or college student to prepare yourself for a job in the sports field. If you've tuned in to this before, your guys are in store, and everybody's in store for another excellent program on this series of Before the Snap. As you know, my name is Jake Ray. I'm a youth and education manager here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. We've got Nathan Martin as well as Jerry Shockey. You'll hear from them later today, both members of our youth and education team here, where it's our mission at the Hall of Fame to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence together. And those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, honesty, all of which make our Hall of Famers great football players, but it made them great men, great members of the community, husbands, fathers off the field. And truly, you can use these values to make you the best student and best employee that you can be. These values are going to continue to pop up through all of the things we talk about today. So I'm super excited to hear how these values impacted Liz's career inside the game of football. Before we do get started, some important thank yous I'd like to pass out. First and foremost, Liz, thank you so much for being a part of the program today, giving time out of your busy schedule to talk to all of the students that we're going to have tuning in on our YouTube live stream today. Secondly, I'd like to thank our teachers, administrators, educators, professors, anybody that shared this program out with their students today or tuning in live. We so appreciate you allowing us to be just a small part of your students' learning experience. And then lastly, students, this is for you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This program doesn't take place without you connecting in. Nobody, as I always joke, Nathan and I have a bunch of questions and we can ask those questions, but nobody wants to hear from us. Liz doesn't want to hear from us. This program is for you to opportunity to grow your network, start to interact with some professionals in the sports field and ask your questions. So as always, if you're tuning in with us today, first off, let us know where you're watching from. We love to see all the different colleges represented. So in the YouTube live chat, go ahead and post your college, your mascot, give them a shout out. Let us know where you're watching from today. And if you have a question, put that in the live chat as well. Let us know your name, the school you go to, and then ask your question. As always, Nathan is out watching those to make sure we can get all those questions as part of the program, or as many as we could. We hope we can't get to them all because there's just that many great questions. As always, I'm going to put the pressure on Nathan. First person to submit a question automatically gets their question asked. So be the first. We challenge you to be the first person to ask a question today and start to grow your sport experience within the sports field. So today, all that say, we are lucky to be joined by Liz Jeralds, who is in her 9th season with the Denver Broncos and serves as the Senior Manager of Community Development. In her role, she works with the community organizations and nonprofits to maximize the team's impact in the community throughout strategic programming and events, and oversees all player outreach and engagement. In the past year, Liz helped launch various programs and initiatives under the team's and the NFL's Inspire Change program, which works to create meaningful change. She graduated from Cornell University in 2010 with a bachelor's in policy analysis and management, which is going to be fun because I don't know if that has anything to do with sports, but I'm sure we'll dive into that, and earn her master's in sport management. That definitely has something to do with sports in 2013 from the University of Texas at Austin. She grew up in New York and has lived in Denver since 2013. And enjoys exploring Denver with her husband and her dog, as mostly everybody does. So, Liz, I'd like to welcome you to Before the Snap.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and get to connect with young people who have a passion for sports, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, we're going to start out at the perks of hosting the program as I get to ask the first couple of questions. Yeah. 10,000 foot view. What does a day-to-day life look like in your job with the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, so our department basically uses the team's platform to do good in the community. So things that people hear about a lot: hospital visits, Play 60 and youth football clinics, to things behind the scenes where we partner with a juvenile detention center next door to our training facility to mentor young kids who are impacted by the juvenile justice system. That's kind of a big glimpse at what we do. And we do so by partnering with really strong and strategic nonprofit organizations, community organizations, and then leveraging our assets, whether it's our players, staff, cheerleaders, our facilities, our resources, all of that to really just figure out where we can make a difference in the community. So each day looks a little bit different, but a lot of times it's fielding requests, whether they're internal. For me, a lot of times I'm working with players on, hey, Liz, I want to make a difference in this area. Can you connect me and can you create an opportunity? I want to donate money. I want to use my time. It looks different, and we really curate each opportunity to the individual that we're working with, whether it's a player, a nonprofit, or someone else that we're working with. So a lot of it is managing those requests, a lot of event planning, a lot of collaboration across different departments. We work really closely with really every department within the organization, whether it's football, operations, ticketing, digital media, public relations, sponsorship. We really get to work with a lot of people. So whether it's internal or external, it's a lot of relationship building and management.
I think the unique thing about working inside the community relations, or in your case, community impact realm with an NFL team is, we get to do a lot of work with those different departments throughout the NFL and their clubs. And it's amazing to see how many people are there for 10, 15, 20 years. And in the sports field, you don't see that a lot. Why do you think people who work under that community umbrella stay so long in one spot and in one career?
Yeah, I think we are really fortunate in that every day we get to make a difference in our job, and being around football, being around sports is really exciting. It's also really challenging, and you have to do a lot on nights and weekends and sacrifice a lot. But in our role specifically, we are constantly able to see the impact of our work in really tangible ways, whether it's helping someone navigate their battle with cancer and providing player support, or helping a kid learn that they are passionate about football and want to join a flag football league and see where that takes them. We get to connect with so many people and constantly see the power of sports and how our team impacts people's lives each and every day. And that's the power of football. That's the power of, for us here in Broncos country, our team and our organization and the legacy that so many before us have built. But to be able to make an impact and connect with people on a day-to-day basis and see what your organization and your sport can do is just so fulfilling. And I think that helps drive a lot of people to stay and continue to make those sacrifices and work really hard to have those positive moments and memorable impacts.
And kind of off of that, you always hear the cliche saying, and I'm sure people have heard it before, you never work a day in your life if you love what you do. And I think that message applies to everybody, but specifically people who work in the community, not just for an NFL team, but for any organization, that applies and hits home just a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's so different each and every day and each and every season. We have programs, event partnerships that carry on from year to year and have been around for 20 years, but we're constantly evaluating, what can we do different? What can we add to the table? And Tuesday was a perfect example of this. Of my morning started and I was at a local nonprofit working with therapy dogs with one of our players. And then in the afternoon, I was at our stadium. We're working with local officials and a nonprofit on a gun buyback program where people can come turn in guns that then are created into garden tools. And to do those two things in one day is pretty wild. And it can be different and evolve and change and look really different from day to day and season to season. So it also just keeps it interesting and exciting to keep innovating and being the best that we can.
You talked a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis and working with these different events and nonprofits and those things you mentioned right there. How do those come about? Because we know they just don't happen. You just don't happen to get an invite to an event like that. So from the NFL organization side, from the Broncos organization, how do these relationships begin? Is it only through a player? Do you see a story on the news and go, hey, I think we need to work with that organization? How do all those relationships come about?
Yeah, so it almost looks kind of multifaceted. So on the NFL front, there are programs and initiatives that every team does that people see tied into games and woven throughout the season. So things like a crucial catch or salute to service or inspire change. Those are kind of NFL priority areas that all the teams dial into, but each team is different and each market is different. So for us, we took a crucial catch and we created our Fight Like a Bronco platform, which was the first in the NFL to be inclusive to all types of cancers, men, women, children, as an expansion of what started as a breast cancer awareness platform. So each team has the opportunity to figure out what makes sense in their market, which is really impactful, and just knowing that we have that autonomy. On the team level, there are initiatives that were in place from way before I was even with the team. So Mr. Bolin, for example, he really cared about investing in youth in our community as one of his key pillars. And so he established the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club in Northeast Denver that opened in 2003. So that is long before I joined the team and will be here long after, hopefully. So some of those are established on the team level as team priorities, initiatives and partnerships that are really key in our community. Our community, especially with COVID, has been really impacted by food insecurity, homelessness with the rising cost of living in Denver. So those are unique to us in our city, our market, our team. And so those are things that the team are always going to focus on. And then we have player initiatives. So we have players from all different parts of the country who've been impacted by all different types of things. We have players that will say, hey, example, I really want to work with probation officers. I got in trouble as a kid. My probation officer helped me get on track. I want to be able to help kids in our community. So that was something that one of our players, Garrett Bowles, came to us. We established a partnership with the juvenile probation court next door. And that's really a player-driven initiative where he's the one driving the force. We're supporting him in that work. So kind of the NFL team and player levels are where those stem and drive from. And then on the team side, each year we evaluate everything we did in the prior year and say what worked, what didn't, how has our community changed, how do we need to dial into the key issues, and we evolve from year to year as things change and evolve as well.
I think, and that's the thing, especially over the last 2 years, how much change and how you had to evolve is very important. One of the things you mentioned there is working with these different initiatives throughout the NFL season, and we all know the important one at the end of the year, the Walter Payton Man of the Year. And I think Nathan's got a really good question on some things around the Walter Payton Man of the Year for one of our students. So I'm going to throw it just on the other side of this wall, actually, to Nathan Martin, who's got a question from one of our students.
Awesome.
Yeah, Jake, thank you so much for sending it over here to me. And Liz, thanks for being a part of the program today. The question, I guess, kind of could be related to the Walter Payton Man of the Year. We'll see what Liz's answer is. So Zach from the University of Nebraska asked the question. He said he saw that the Broncos were one of 4 finalists for the ESPN's 2021 Sports Humanitarian Team of the Year Award. I had to make sure I get that out there right. And he was curious, what separates your work, the Broncos' work in the community, from the other 31 teams across the NFL, the other clubs, for you guys to have that honor of being one of those finalists for that award 2 years in a row? I had to Google it real quick. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. I think you look around the league and on any given day, all 32 teams are doing amazing and impactful work. And we have the ability to connect with our counterparts around the league and listen and learn from them and get to understand what they're doing, kind of how oftentimes we can, share ideas and best practices and lean on each other and support each other. I think we've been really fortunate here, and this is the only NFL team I've worked for, so I can only speak to my experience here, but we have a long history and culture of community stewardship, and that started at the top with Mr. Bolin, our executive team led by Joe Ellis, our GM George Payton, our head coach who just joined us. He's already been out in the community making a difference, and so starting at the top, and then I've been so fortunate over the years to work with players that just truly cherish the opportunity to give back and make a difference. And so from the top to the bottom across the organization, every department, there's so much buy-in here as to we are fortunate to work in the sport of football, have our community support each and every day on Sundays in the season. And it's really imparted on everyone that's part of the Broncos organization to take that seriously and give back. And so it's really built into our culture here, which I think is really unique and really special and allows us to do really innovative work and really impactful work to benefit our community.
Yeah, I think that's so cool to hear how it's an organizational decision, and that's why you guys are able to have the impact that you have. It's also cool to hear because we think of the NFL teams and franchises competing against each other, and you don't want to give out, the best way to scout this position or, this strategy offensively or defensively. But when it comes to giving back to the community, like really, let's just be an open book so that we can impact all of these different cities and these communities where there's clubs playing. So that's really cool to hear that you guys are able to do that. And that helps you have an even greater impact. I got to encourage the students, keep submitting questions. We want to hear from you guys. And like Jake said, your questions oftentimes are a lot better than ours and more insightful. But for now, I'll send it back to Jake to keep this conversation going.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. And I want to kind of piggyback on some of the stuff you talked about there. And you look at, social media obviously is a great way to stay up to date with all the great things that, and not only the Broncos, but every community relations department out there is doing. So I encourage all of our students watching, if you want to learn what teams are doing in the community, take a look at their social medias. A lot of the community give back has their own page where you can see all the things. And one name you always see pop up, especially when it comes time for giving back, is Justin Simmons, safety for you guys there in Denver. How cool is it to work with him and everything he's done over the past 2 years, whether it was COVID or social justice, and working with him on a day-to-day basis and all the great things he's doing in the community?
Yeah, I think anyone that has seen the work that Justin does is just blown away by the generosity of he and his family. And I think what's neat is, it's not just making a donation here or hosting a camp there. Like, he gives his time each and every week to find a way to make a difference. And if there's some way that he can step up and help, he's always going to be the first one to do it. And something I love about Justin is that he's been really intentional over his career and how he builds upon his philanthropy each year. So he started as a rookie, mid-round draft pick. He got involved with team events and was like, I love the youth football. I love Boys and Girls Club. Let me be involved in all that. But he would sign up for events, show up, be active in those communities. Then towards the middle of the career, he's like, okay, I feel like I have a good establishment for where my passion areas are, where I want to make a difference, and what the Denver community needs. And so he built up to a point where he launched his Justin Simmons Foundation, but really took time to think about what that needed to look like, what areas of impact he could have. And then he and his family are just, joint collectively in everything he does. So his wife's at our community events, his daughters, they're integral to all the work that he does. And he just continues to build on the foundation that he built, he laid as a young player. And Justin, anyone who's gotten to meet him, see him speak, he's just so passionate, so thoughtful about the work that he does. And truly being able to see him make long, deep relationships with people in our community that grow each and every year. And he is always committed to showing up for people. And I think, it's easy to write a check, and that's really important in some ways too. And Justin will write a blank check for his time. Like, he shows up, he's constantly there, he goes above and beyond. And to be able to work with a player like that, that really sets the standard for the rest of the team and the rest of NFL. Has just been a privilege. And we're so fortunate to have him on our team. He's obviously an outstanding football player, but an even better human.
So Justin Simmons obviously has kind of been that mainstay there in Denver, even though his career has been so short. And if anybody hasn't been watching ESPN or the news lately, they probably haven't seen that Denver brought in a pretty good quarterback in a trade here over the last few days in Russell Wilson. And seeing everything that Russ did in Seattle, as somebody who works in the community, not only as a member of the Broncos, how excited are you from your community side to have a guy like Russell Wilson coming in, knowing all the great work he does?
Yeah, so just some background information for people who aren't as familiar with how the NFL works. The league year starts, it'll be this Wednesday, the 16th each year. So up until then, nothing's official. We can't comment on anything, but we have seen the alleged reports of what's going on in the news and everything. And I think this is an exciting time for us each and every year of we get to bring in free agents every year. We have new people joining the team between free agency and the draft. And anytime someone new joins our team, our department is doing extensive research. They have the scouting reports and all the on-field stuff, but our department does a lot of research as well as to, who are these humans joining our team? We know they're fantastic football players, but what are their stories? Where are they from? Looking at what they did in college, where are their interest areas, scouring their social media pages to really paint a bigger picture of who's going to be making up our team moving forward. And so anytime you have someone that comes in with a lot of hype around their community work, and especially on the free agent side, you get a bigger picture of, who was this person with their NFL team? We reach out to our counterparts at those teams and say like, hey, what was this person involved in? How are they to work with? So we constantly do research and evaluation as well. And when there are some guys that we just know coming in are going to be really exciting in that field, and we hope for that every year. And our personnel department does a really good job of also just understanding that high character individuals can make a team stronger. And so we've been really fortunate with the culture and the makeup of our locker room to be, in addition to great football players, just really good leaders and humans. And we've seen that translate to our community work as well.
Guess I should have said rumors.
Alleged.
Until it's official here coming in the next couple of days. But
I have a PR background, so
gotcha.
I'm well trained.
My apologies.
You're good.
So, we've talked about working with a guy like, Justin Simmons, and, you've seen the great Broncos to come, Von Miller comes to mind, even though he's not with the team, somebody who was kind of that the face of the organization. So when working with current guys, but also, working with maybe Hall of Famers, some legends from the team, what are the similarities and differences between working with players who are currently on the team versus people who have come in no longer with the organization, retired Hall of Famers, etc.?
Yeah, so it's been great to work with our alumni group, and we have some people internally who manage that programming, but we definitely benefit from it on the community side of, just the way the football schedule works. Sometimes we can't have current players at events, or with COVID, we were really restricted on appearances and different things. And because our team has such a strong history and tradition, our alumni have stayed really involved in the team. A lot of them live in the Denver area, which is fantastic. We have Ring of Famers and Hall of Famers on our staff, Billy Thompson, Steve Atwater. They're in the building each day. They're out in the community. We did a staff service event where we were reading to students at a local elementary school, and Steve Atwater was there, not as like Hall of Famer Steve Atwater, but just as Denver Broncos employees, Steve Atwater. And it's just amazing to see how connected our alumni are. And, it's easy to, you retire, you want to have a slower lifestyle, football is so intense, but our alumni really continue to be involved with us, and it's neat to see they show up at events. And obviously Steve is a huge deal. If we have Peyton, he's a huge deal. These Hall of Fame individuals, but alumni that are maybe less known, but in Broncos country, like people love them, and they're so knowledgeable about our team that it's just amazing to see the reception that they have, and to be able to have that deep of a roster of alumni to bring to events, to learn about the history of the team. As someone who didn't grow up in Denver, they're constantly educating me about what it was like. And there's such a love for Mr. Bolin of, when he was around, this is what we did. And so it's neat to keep that alive and have that tradition keep going with our alumni programming.
You mentioned a pretty famous alumni in there, and in Peyton Manning. And, everybody knew it was a given once his 5 years was up. Pretty good chance that he was going to be enshrined here in the Hall of Fame going through the process last year. Part of our job at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is not only to honor their legacy and when they're enshrined in the Hall of Fame, but continue to do that as a museum and tell the entire story of the game of pro football. So we are fortunate enough to have Jerry Shockey, who's the Director of Youth and Education, out live in the museum to showcase to everybody watching today, whether it's on a recording live on YouTube right now, what we do inside the walls of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And he's in front of one of our most popular artifacts, I believe, that we have on display right now. So Jerry, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jake. Liz, thank you for tuning in here or connecting in here today. All the students that are connected in from all across the country watching this on YouTube Live, thank you for tuning in here today. speaking of quarterbacks that may or may not be coming to Denver, but, it's been a whole career somewhere and then moved there. We have another one of those. It's been obviously a legendary career in Indianapolis, came to Denver, won a Super Bowl. And so this is a pretty historic artifact, number 509. It was really cool here at the Hall of Fame. We not only have, obviously, Peyton Manning's a Hall of Famer, but we not only have artifacts from legendary players, but we're constantly, if you look around here, there's artifacts from this season. So as records are set, as records are broken, we get those things here, put them on display. Some cases, if it's something we can plan for, we can have it on display the next day when that record is broken. So pretty cool stuff that we have here. But Jake and myself and Nathan that are connected in here, we are essentially the community relations department here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame as well. And so I've been here for 22 years. And I noticed Jake mentioned at the beginning a little bit about some of the movement that happens as far as when we talk about positions in sports and how quickly people can move up by moving location. But one thing I have noticed in 22 years here is community relations a little bit different when we talk about community involvement, because you still got people, and Liz, you would know the names of like Jenner Takancic and Renee Harvey or Chase Hartman or, Evan Lee Robbins or these other community relations, fields that are with these various NFL teams. It seems like people stay a little bit longer in the community relations department. I think because especially it's sales is sales, but when you get in the community and start doing stuff, it just seems that people want to stay there longer. Can you talk a little bit about the why, if you will, why it seems like people stay a little bit longer in the community relations departments first, maybe like ticket sales or something like that?
Yeah, I think I like to think that we have the best job in sports. We get to be on the front lines of how our teams can impact the community. And I think having a calling that is bigger than the day-to-day work. So community relations is awesome. I feel like I've shared a lot of stuff that's really neat of getting to work with players and programming, but it's also a lot of busy work similar to any other job. You're answering emails, dealing with meetings, having to say no a lot. And just like any job, there's pros and cons, but to be able to know that the work that you're doing is going to impact people and make tangible changes in your community is something that's really fulfilling. And I get to go home every day and, it might have been a 14-hour day with an event and I'm exhausted, but I know that I made a difference and I helped our players make a difference. And additionally, just the team changes from year to year. And so our work continues to evolve and it stays really interesting and really challenging at times. I think the last 2 years are a perfect example of that, there was just so much need and we couldn't help everyone and anyone. So we had to be really strategic in how do we use our resources? How do we make a difference? But it keeps it really interesting and it keeps you on your toes. And, there's always going to be a day when you have a really tough day, but for every one of those, there's so many greater days of knowing that you're getting to do a really neat job and help people and getting paid to do that. So I think that's why you see a lot of people in community stay from year to year. And I get asked a lot of like, how do I get into that? And why aren't there more jobs posted? And it's because of that. It's people, there are only so many jobs with each team and people love it. And it's so much relationship building, whether it's with your building or the community that you want to keep those relationships going to.
Perfect. Thank you, Liz. Jake, I'm going to send it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerry. Live look in there to a pretty cool artifact we have here at the Hall of Fame, the 509 football and jersey from Peyton when he broke the record there in Denver. So actually happened not a long time ago, but not as close as we think. So yeah, it's always cool where we can kind of include into everything that we do what we have in the museum. And obviously Peyton was an easy one for us to do. I know we got a lot of questions from our students, so I'm gonna send it back to Nathan Martin, I think got 3 pretty good questions from some of the students tuning in.
Yeah, Jake, we've gotten some solid questions from our students. And Liz, the first one that I'm going to ask you comes from Dewan, who attends Tulsa. And curious, what kind of work is the NFL doing, and maybe you're even doing in the community relations world related to diversity, equity, and inclusion? I know that's kind of been a hot button topic within our country recently. So, what are the Broncos doing and the NFL in general in that area?
Yeah, it's definitely become more of an emphasis in the last couple of years, which I think is really important. We are one of the teams who hired a full-time diversity, equity, and inclusion staff person. Our VP of DEI is named China Jude, and she's been really instrumental in helping the organization really evaluate DEI through a lens of everything we do. So our hiring practices, who are we partnering with in the business community? How can we really layer it into everything we do? Because we truly believe that having a diverse workforce and making sure that people feel included in our organization will help us be stronger on and off the field. So I think on an organizational level, we continue to make progress in that area and make it a point of emphasis. In our community work, it really is a lens for a lot of what we do. So in a couple weeks, actually, we're hosting a Denver Broncos DEI career huddle that Katie Schuster from our department has spearheaded. She launched it last year in a virtual format. And we're really excited that this year it'll be a mix of in-person and virtual. So if you're in Denver or not, you can register for that for free, participate virtually. And she is helping showcase different career paths similar to what this program does in our organization. And then as well, people will talk about how DEI impacts their specific role and department. So she has representation from football, business, sponsorship, community, digital, really across the board. And as well, that will help us build a more diverse pipeline of candidates for when we have internships, job openings as well. They get to have some of that information firsthand about what's available in the organization. On the programming side, we do a lot with our Inspire Change program, which is our social justice initiative directed by the players. So they helped identify the different focus areas. Different things that we've done through that has been working with our Boys and Girls Club on a youth leadership program where they talk about race, they talk about identity, they talk about stereotypes, they discuss the history of sports. And then they work together, and Justin Simmons is really instrumental in this to plan a march for peace to bring the community together and work towards things like racial equity and reducing gun violence in our communities, which has been a really big issue here in the Denver community and something that's really important to our teens. We recently did a donation to Every Kid Sports with the goal of getting more girls involved with football and building that pipeline in our community. And we're really excited about how that can help get more girls into football. And that's a priority area of ours too. So it's really woven into a lot of our different programming events, but it's something that we're thinking about and talking about every single day of how can we get better? How can we do more? What are we doing that's working, and where do we need to tweak things as well?
Yeah, I think all those things you touched on, because you touched on a lot there, are important. And it's awesome to see that as an organization, you guys have made it a priority. You already had existing initiatives and you've started new ones to, I guess, answer the call to kind of hone in our focus on this important topic. So it's really cool to see that the Broncos are kind of at the forefront of doing that, even within other clubs. Another question we have here is from Brandon, attends George Mason University. And Brandon's curious, what do you, Liz, enjoy the most about working for the Denver Broncos and just knowing, like, I work in the National Football League? Like, how cool is that? He's curious, what's your most enjoyable thing or your favorite thing about working for the Broncos?
So my favorite thing over the years has been working with our Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club. As I mentioned, it opened in 2003. Our owner, Mr. Bolin, was really instrumental in that. And it's just an amazing place where kids can go. They get access to sports, tutoring, programming. They're around strong adult role models. We bring players there all the time, and they're just integral to really all of our community programming. And so I love that I've been connected to that program and organization through my work with the Broncos. I love seeing players go out there, and when we go there, they don't wear their community jerseys, and the kids don't ask them for autographs because they're part of that family and they want them to feel like they're part of the family. So you get to see really genuine and authentic interactions. Some of my favorite memories have been there. The March for Peace, which I just talked about, where Justin helped the young leaders plan a community march. Demarius Thomas used to go there a lot, and being able to see him connect with the kids and have that lasting impact will always be something that's really close to my heart. And so just a lot of my memories working with the Broncos and working with the community department. We brought teens who won their Youth of the Year program out to the Super Bowl with us. Like, it's just a partnership that's ingrained in everything that we do. And I've been able to see kids grow up there and they still talk about memories, or coming to the UCL Training Center to do a Play 60 event. Like, it's just so awesome to see the breadth of opportunities that we've been able to work with them on. So that's been my favorite thing that I've been able to do through my role here.
Yeah, you mentioned something there at the very end that kind of struck a chord with me. You mentioned being able to see kids grow up. And I think sometimes working in the community relations, the education world, like, it can be challenging to know, like, what type of impact are we really having? But with you having been with the Broncos for, so long now, you literally have watched some of these kids grow up, that you guys are regularly there, and seeing them and the impact that you're having to have, that has to be so meaningful, because it can be hard to measure sometimes the quantitative versus qualitative. Like, are we making a difference? I think so, but I don't really know if that character education had an impact. Watching the kids grow up, you're kind of seeing the impact you're having. So that's really, really cool. And I can understand why it's so meaningful to you, and really the favorite part of your job. Last question I have from our students, unless they throw in a really, really good one here. I'll let Jake know, but last one I think from our students is going to be from Anthony, who attends St. John's University. And this is a good question, I think, because a lot of students have to be wondering this. Anthony's curious. I'm a student. I want to work in pro sports, specifically the NFL. What advice would you give that student, Liz, in college? Best way to start building a network, to create that network, and to kind of get their foot into the door of working in pro sports?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think one thing I always share is if you're early in your collegiate career, or you haven't even gotten there yet, if you're going to a school that has a college athletics department, find a way to work with them. I didn't realize that was an opportunity in my undergrad career. So I didn't get to do that until my grad school times. But whether it's a media relations department, or helping on game days, or working in ticketing, just getting your foot in the door and getting that experience can be really beneficial. And college athletics departments are a great way to start. They always need help, whether it's a part-time job, an internship. Maybe they don't have any of those, but you can job shadow or informational interview. Just getting to know people and start that networking is really key. And it's also important to understand how many different people it takes to make an athletics department or hear an NFL team run. So it was very eye-opening for me early on to understand, like, how many different departments there were and what everyone was doing behind the scenes. And you look at a game day and it takes hundreds of people to make a game day happen. And so just start learning about those different roles and figuring out, where do my strengths align? Am I really good at sales? Should I work at ticketing? Or am I really good at writing and communication? Should I be looking towards the digital media or PR department? I think honing in on those things is really important, and just having a better understanding of what it takes to make it run. We obviously see players, coaches, athletic trainers, all the people that you see on the sidelines, but that's just a small fraction of the different roles there are in the NFL and sports in general. And so the quicker that you can understand how it all functions together, the better. And if you can get work experience and start making those connections, you'll be in a better place moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I love how you kind of just throw it out there. Go work with the college athletic departments. They're going to need the help. They're going to want the help. Oftentimes they're looking for students that are willing to gain that experience. And you learn so many different things. And Jake, I've heard him say it several times because I've worked with him for 5+ years. He's like, sometimes it's better to learn what you don't like to do, and you can learn that more quickly if you're basically lending yourself to work for free or very little, minimum wage or something, getting that experience in college athletics, so that then when you go apply for the Broncos internship, they're like, oh, look, this student's taken initiative. They have worked for their college athletic department. Maybe we should give them a shot. I said it was going to be the last question, but we got another good one that came in here. This is Ricky, a student from the University of Louisville. I'm reading it straight off the page here on YouTube. close to the end of their master's in sports administration. Similar question to what we just asked here from Anthony, but specifically, how can Ricky make his application, his resume, his cover letter stand out? And then now I'm in the interview. What's that one piece of advice for interviewing that you've had that you're like, this stands out in an interview that you would give Ricky?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we're fortunate that so many people love sports, and the passion for sports in our country is huge. That doesn't mean that you should work in sports. So working in sports is really challenging. And so we get resumes all the time that are like, or cover letters of, hey, I love the Broncos and I really want to work for them because I love them. And that's great. Like, we all love the Broncos here. We all want them to succeed, but what makes you as someone who could contribute to our organization and make it better? And how are you different from the other person down the street who's a Broncos fan? So finding ways, you want to have a passion for sports, but what are the skills you bring to the position that would make our department stronger, make our organization stronger? How are you differentiating yourself from other people? What have you learned through your experiences, whether it's at school or work or a different leadership role that you're showcasing as making you a strong candidate? So I have people ask me, like, if I don't have sports experience, do I even have a shot? Yes, you do, because if you can tell me how something you did can translate to how our department can be better, and you're bringing a different perspective to the team, that's great. We recently had an intern who had a nonprofit background. We didn't have as much of that in our department, and he was able to bring a completely different lens to the table of, well, having experience with a nonprofit, these are the things that would be helpful if we're working with a team. And so, there's no one resume that you have to create or one model that you have to create. You need to be true to yourself, but showcase how your skills and how your experiences are going to make you a strong fit for this specific role. And I say this specific role because I think it's really easy to copy and paste, and you're trying to apply for all these jobs, but you really do need to tailor your resume and your cover letter to the position at hand. Like, really read what the job description is and how can you take your experience and show that you're qualified for it, or you can strengthen what you'd be asked to do. So I think that's really important. I think when it comes to the interview, being prepared, I cannot overstate that. Do research. One of the questions we ask a lot is like, pick one program that the Broncos work on in our community and tell me about it and why you want to be involved with it. And some people haven't even gone to our website, and so they can't answer that question. And so just understand, look at the website, look at the social media, do your research ahead of time, and you'll feel more prepared to better answer questions, tie them to the work that you would be doing, and show that you've gone above and beyond and that you really want to be in the place to have that position and succeed.
I will say to our students that are watching, Liz mentioned they ask a question of, name a Broncos program that you've researched and looked at. We ask a very similar question when we're interviewing interns and potential, coworkers here. Tell us what you know about the Hall of Fame and the programs that we offer. So that's a very common question that you can expect when you're going into those interviews. And she said she can't, overstate the research that you do beforehand. The preparation work goes a long, long way for you to have a successful interview, because the more you know, the less nervous you're going to be, the more it can become a conversation when you're having that interview, which can be more meaningful for the person that you're trying to get to hire you, really, at the end of the day. And you actually answered Aaron. I say we're doing one question, and now all the students start sending in questions. That's just how it is. So I said we were going to do one more. I'll just ask it. I think you kind of already answered it in your last response, but Aaron's a student from West Virginia University, majoring in economics, and kind of curious, how do you use an economics degree, like sports, fan of sports? Is there a way I can plug into a sports career, but I'm not a sport management major? So what would you say there for a background like that?
Yeah, my undergrad degree was basically in health policy and economics. Has nothing to do with sports, but a lot of times when I was applying, and so to backtrack, I did my undergrad degree, had nothing to do with sports, got a healthcare consulting job, still had nothing to do with sports, but my job was very much 8 to 5. I wanted to make some extra money, so I ended up working for University of Maryland in their guest relations department. If you don't know what a guest relations role does, it's like all the people you see when you go to a sporting event that are either helping you get in the door, taking your tickets, directing you. it tends to be a lot of people that are retired. I think I was the only person under like 50 doing that job. I had to wear khakis and a sweater vest. It was like not the greatest, but for me, it was my foot in the door. And I got to talk to my bosses about, what different roles are there? How could I further my experience? And for me, it made sense to go to grad school. I do not advocate that for a lot of people, but for me, it helped me get the experience that I needed. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's required. A lot of people I went that were in my master's in sports management program don't work in sports after it. So like every path is different. I don't think there's any right or wrong way, but to backtrack, for me, when I was applying to grad school programs and I had to talk about, why do I want to get my master's in sports management? And I was looking to get jobs at University of Texas in their athletics department and didn't have relevant experience. But for me, I took what I did in my undergrad education, as well as the extracurriculars and different things I did. And I said, this may not look like it translates, but here it is. I am a critical thinker. I've had to work with numbers. I've had to look at and evaluate policies. And I just took whatever I could to make myself applicable. And it's not lying, because it was all true and I could back it up. But it was just like, if A doesn't equal B, how can I make A help B? And that wasn't a good math analogy, but I wasn't a math major, so it's fine. But it's just looking about, your education's one component, but what else are you doing? Are you coaching a youth league? Are you refereeing? Are you helping on game days? Like there's so many different things that you bring to the table outside of your whatever's on your certificate or diploma. And it's how can you show that through my work in this field, in this industry, completing this degree, I will be strong for this because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, for sure. I think you got to be sometimes creative if you don't have the sports, experience as to how it can be relative to the job description that you've read when you're applying, so that then you can kind of sell yourself and say, hey, I haven't worked in sports, but I have this experience and it can apply to what you're asking me to do in this position. So there's definitely a path for you, Erin, as an economics major, if you still want to work in sports. So hopefully you can take some of that advice that Liz gave and apply it into your own career path. But that's all I got from the students for today. Liz, thank you so much on behalf of the students, on behalf of myself, for being a part of the program. I know Jake will have another question or two, but we really appreciate you joining us for Before the Snap today.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you, Nathan. Finally throwing it back my way. Just kidding. Great questions from all of our students out there that came in here right before we wrap up. And Liz, just like Nathan said, a few more questions to ask here. And I want to talk a little bit about your experience with the Broncos. One thing about working in sports is, you get to do a lot of cool things, but at the end of the day, you get to be a part of some very cool experiences that people would pay a lot of money to be a part of. So looking back on your career and maybe do the math right, but I might know where this is going. In your time with the Broncos, what has been your favorite game, moment, event you got to go to that when looking back on your career, when, you're sitting in your recliner thinking about, man, I can't believe I was a part of this. What would that event be for you?
So I was here for our Super Bowl win, 2015 season. And it was obviously, the game was incredible. It was amazing to be at the celebration, just the feeling of all these things that people you cared about and worked with had all their hard work had paid off, and everything had fallen into place that season to get us to the upper level and echelon. The game itself was amazing. I'm a huge Beyonce fan, and she performed at halftime. So I felt like it was fate that we were there and that we won the game. But I think what was also cool was, I've been here for the Super Bowl. I've been here for seasons that we haven't had a winning record. And through it all, our fans and our community continue to show up for us. And, that season when we were winning a ton of games, when Peyton was here, it was just such a different level of all of that. And it was amazing to see just how much the community came together. We were getting elementary schools were writing letters to the players, dropping off banners. And it was just so amazing to see the impact that it had on the city, and just what it took to get there, and to be able to kind of have that deep sigh of all right, we did it. It all worked out. We hope to get back there again someday, but I think just that memory has been definitely my greatest on-field memory. I think we had so many games that season that were so close that could have gone one way or the other. And it just felt like the football gods were in our favor. Of like, DeMarcus had this crazy strip sack and, all these crazy touchdowns in the last minute and interceptions. Like every facet of the team was working together and creating moments like that to happen. So that was the coolest one to see on the field. I think off the field, my favorite memory was for sure, again, DT was like one of my favorite players and just a dear friend to me. And a lot of my favorite memories include things with him. And we had a young man at the Broncos Boys and Girls Club who basically got to high school and didn't feel comfortable reading. He had a learning disability. He had just kind of been pushed through, and he was really struggling with school. And my boss at the time and Rich, who runs our Boys and Girls Club, and his mom were like, DT is his idol. So if we can get him to do well in school, like the one thing that's going to motivate him is DT. And so we said, if you get your grades up, DT will sign a poster for you. And if you maintain your grades, he will call you. And so we kind of set up this incentives program. And one day DT came to the club and surprised him. And like his reaction was just so beyond anything we could have imagined. And DT continued to mentor him for years after that. But at the club, like the kids couldn't believe that he had showed up for Jaden. And it was just really neat to see all of Jaden's hard work be celebrated in that way. And they like asked him to call Jimmy Butler. So DT FaceTime Jimmy Butler. And it was just like just a lot of joy that day. And that was for sure my favorite kind of community memory from my time here.
And, Super Bowls are great, and being a part of those wins are awesome. But at those memories, they kind of just make you smile and really make you feel good. Not so much that you were a part of it, but just to step back and see the reactions. I like to call it here, it's that aha moment when like the light bulb clicks and they get it. That's what it's about. So yeah, those are awesome stories. Sitting here just smiling, got goosebumps on how cool that they are. As we wrap up here, for those of you that know, March is Women's History Month. So we'd be remiss if we didn't ask, being a woman in a male-dominated industry, working in sports, working in specifically football, what are some of the things you've learned in your journey with the Broncos being there so long, and what's the future look like, and how important is it to have a role like yours within sports?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think when I started here, I was one of 7 women in the building and the only one that worked directly with players. And now I walk around the halls and there's significantly more women in football roles. And so I'm excited about the progress that the league is making, that football is making, that sports are making, but we definitely still have significant room to improve and continue to get more women and other minorities involved in the game. I think one thing I've learned over the years is to build that support and know who your allies are and who your support system is. And I'm really fortunate to have a lot of strong women here that we all look out for each other. We all support each other. We celebrate each other. We help advance each other, as well as some really strong male coworkers and colleagues that have helped give us the space to step up and have a seat at the table and be in a leadership role here in the team. And so just knowing that you can build and find your support system in different ways. And I think the future, we're just going to continue to see more women with really crucial and significant leadership roles in football. I think women love football. They're knowledgeable about football, and they have a place here. And if you are here to make a difference and make your organization stronger, there are so many women that do that, and we need to have more of them. And I'm excited to see more women take on leadership roles and really have significant voices and impact in football organizations across the league and at all different levels.
Looking back on your journey to getting a job with the Broncos organization, was there a female within the game already that you kind of looked up to? Maybe not so like as a mentor mentee, but somebody that you looked up to, maybe strive to maybe one day be in their seat or have a job like theirs that was already in the game.
Yeah, it's so funny. I think when I started working at Texas, I didn't even realize that like there weren't a lot of women in football. And I was really fortunate there. I worked really closely with the football team. Texas had a female athletic director who I looked up to and got to see in action. One person that I always really admired was Erin Andrews, and I had just watched her on TV and saw the interviews she did. And my intern season here, she came to interview a ton of the players. It was one of Peyton's biggest years. So she interviewed like all of the receivers. And I remember getting to meet her and work with her. And she was just so kind and took time to really help answer any questions I had, share her journey. And so she was someone I always looked up to here. And then I was really fortunate when I took my community development role. My first boss here in that department, her name was Cindy, and she was just a huge advocate for me and helped really empower me to take on the community role. She since left, and my current boss, Allie, is an incredible woman. And I've just been really lucky to be surrounded by incredible women throughout all phases of my career. And some of them people have heard of, and some of them they haven't, but they've all in different ways impacted me and helped kind of forge my path and help elevate me in different roles.
I think that's the cool part, because you look up to these people, former bosses, current bosses, but one day, you're going to be in their shoes, and there's going to be somebody sitting here interviewing for Before the Snap that is in your role that you are in now. So it's cool to kind of see how that filters down. Like you said, more and more impact is going to happen here as the future rolls on. Last question we have today, and this is kind of like how we like to wrap up every program. A lot of cool tips and tricks, whether it's about networking, getting a job, interviewing, resume building, being a female in sports. There's one thing you can leave everybody with today. One idea, one light bulb moment. What do you want everybody who viewed the program to walk away with today?
Yeah, I think true to the work that I do, just always find a way to make an impact wherever you are, and understand that no matter where you work, what your job is, you can always find a way to help someone or make a difference in your community. If you're as lucky as I am to have that as your job, that's great. But I think we all can find ways to make an impact in our communities, and whether that's through sports or through your own personal time, the world needs us, and it's important that we all continue to step up. And if you have a favorite athlete that you see working in a space or with their charity, help support them, take on that cause, or find something that you care deeply about, and just whatever it is, give it 100% and make sure that you're paying it forward to other people and finding ways that you can help others.
I think that's a great way to wrap up this installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series today, featuring Liz Jeralds, Senior Manager of Community Development for the Denver Broncos. Again, Liz, thank you so much for giving up some of your time here today. We know that the NFL season doesn't just take place 18 weeks during the year. It's a full-time job all around the clock for community relations. There's events all year round. So I appreciate you. We here at the Hall of Fame appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of the program.
Awesome. Thanks for all you guys do. We appreciate it.
Before we leave today, just a reminder, I mentioned it earlier, if you want to stay up to date with everything that's going on at the Pro Football Hall of Fame with the Denver Broncos, follow all those social media channels, the community pages, the team pages, to see all the great content that's coming out here from not only the Denver Broncos as we lead into free agency and maybe some quarterbacks changing teams as we lead into the draft and everything. Make sure you stay up to date with that. And for us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, if you're a podcast listener, make sure you subscribe to the Mission podcast that we have here at the Hall of Fame. Our great coworker, Jameer Howerton, is sitting down with all the Hall of Famers that got to be a part of the knock to unveil the class of 2022. Get to see their thoughts, their insights on that, plus so much more. So subscribe, follow, whatever you have to do for all of our pages. Next week, we're off again next week. So no program next Friday, but we've got some awesome programming coming up here at the end of the year. We're going to have Matt Mango from the Tennessee Titans, who works in their ticket office. And then kind of off the schedule a little bit, Tuesday, the 29th, we're going to have Sarah Thomas, who you might know of, the first full-time female official in the NFL as part of a special Women's History Month program under the Before the Snap umbrella. So we would love for everybody to tune into that, hear all the great words that Sarah has to share with everybody. So, as I just said, the game of football isn't just the job that you do on Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays, or even during the NFL season. It's a full-time job, 365 days a year, a lot of the time. So Liz, again, thank you so much for everything you've done for the game of football, impacting the community in Denver and all across the country, and truly everything you've done for us indirectly for us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And lastly, from myself, from Nathan, all of our team, Jerry here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, thank you for being a part of the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
To all of our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. We won't see you next Friday, but tune in 2 weeks when we have Matt Mango on from the Tennessee Titans.